That is Magnus's face at the end of this ludicrous game. He cannot believe it, because after his opponent goes e4, he starts with this knight c6, Nimzovich defense. The rubbish opening play just goes on, but then something incredible happens in the climax of this game. Now, his opponent is the German young grandmaster Dmitrij Kollars. This is online blitz chess, titled Tuesday, July 2023. It's a classic. We get this move of knight f3 and f5 from Magnus. The Colorado counter gambit, apparently. Awful, opening the king, pawn captures, and this is Magnus's follow-up point. So he's preparing to develop the bishop, win back the pawn, bishop b5 pins. Here comes Magnus's sniper, and after knight e5, huge pressure here, we get queen d6, defending and attacking. I mean, this game, honestly, I've never seen a bigger chess swindle. A swindle, by the way, is a game you should not win, but you go on to do it. So we see d4 supporting the knight. e6 now played. Castle's on the board. Knight e7 from Magnus to support the other one, and now you can get the queenside pawns running, but knight c3 selected, more modest. a6 comes on the board. We see a captures, the pawn structure ruined in just a moment, because after bishop f4 pressuring d6, the queen now slides into b4, and it allows Dmitrij to take on c6. Pawn recaptures, and now rook b1 to defend this pawn. Magnus develops just in time, covers c7. We see pawn a3 played to drive back the queen. a5, c4, more active squares, but Magnus drops all the way home. Queen h5 check, g6, now this queen comes into h6, covering the bishop just in time, and Magnus goes king f7. An ugly move, but it does connect his heavy pieces here. Stops the queen invading. Now bishop e5, hits the rook in the corner. Yes, you can take, change the pawn structure, different game. Magnus decides not to. He goes for this queen exchange here, and Dmitrij comes back. Good move. The king now in an x-ray. g4 threatened. So now Magnus takes on e5. Queen recaptures. Again a queen trade is offered, but more good chess from Dmitrij. He's nearly 3,000 rated on chess.com. And Magnus, now not in good form, blunders horrendously. He should go h5, secure this bishop, but he centralizes the rook, looking for e5, but he's simply overlooked pawn to g4. This bishop is trapped. If you go bishop e4, f3 comes, it's got nowhere to go. So instead, we see e5. Magnus gets his central break in. Pawn recaptures, rook takes, queen f3 though, and still the bishop can't move. There's a pin down here. So queen f6 breaks that pin, captures on f5 played, rook takes back, and let's take stock. Magnus has got one pawn for an entire piece. It should just be game over, but somehow it's not. There's 80 moves to go from here. We're rattling through. Queen h3 hits the pawn. So rook h5 intercepts. We get a check. Now king g8. Pawn f4, great move, liberating the white king a bit, running the f-pawn down the board, and Magnus gets a check, taking advantage of the last move. King h1, rook f8 pressures that pawn, but after rook b to e1, you can't actually take it. You could get a line of recaptures, or even just play the rook down straight away. You're going to be mating the black king. So instead, the rook's double, blockade this pawn. Queen takes on c6. Magnus not even a pawn up now. This rook comes to f7. Again, Magnus didn't touch this. He just wants to batten down the hatches, keep material on the board, look for tricks. Queen e8 check played, king g7, and this queen slides back into the e6 square. Queen c4, queen e2 back, again looking for an exchange, but this time Dmitrij's offering it on his terms because he is a piece up here. So Magnus is the one who ducks it. He sets up a check. X-ray attack on the king. So queen g2 played, very natural. Queen d6, rook d1, c6 covers the pawn, but this is nice use of the tactics. Knight to e4. If captures, the lady drops off the board. So instead we see queen d7, knight g5, look at the attack flowing forward. The rook comes to e7, queen d2, queen d6, and now this next move a bit strange. You can bring a rook to the e-file straight away. There's not a threat to actually take this pawn. You know, there's knight e6 check ideas at the end of different lines. But knight h3 played to first cover this pawn, but it does sideline the knight, now preparing this move. So Magnus goes c5. This rook challenges the file. d4, Magnus gets some central pawn action going, rolling forward, but still shouldn't be enough, right? Don't get me wrong. White a piece up, again an exchange offered, ducked with check, so king g1, but aha, a pawn drops on b2. Magnus just trying to work his magic. They're both down to about 10 seconds here. So queen e7 check played, rook f7 covers, another check, now king h6, knight g5, and after the rook moves away from the attack, this is just incredible. There is a checkmate into on the board if Dmitrij can find it. He's very low on time. He misses it, right? The move here is knight e6, and the threat of queen g5 checkmate is simply unavoidable. Plus this knight covers the escape square, of course. That was game over, but completely missed. Queen e4 played instead. Covers c2, hits the rook on b7, so rook d7, now we get knight e6, but just not quite in the right order. Queen c3, f5, I mean white is still destroying black, don't get me wrong, it's like plus 12, 15 here when you run it with the engine, but somehow Magnus is not yet checkmated. He's slithering around, you know, takes on c5 with the knight, best here, but not played. This was instead, now the pawn drops in just a moment with the queen, but rook f1 better to bring the rook into the attack. Somehow Magnus alive here, running around with the king. What is going on? This game's absolutely ludicrous. Magnus is just running these pieces around. How is he possibly going to get play? He's simply a piece down for no pawns, got the more exposed king, but the game goes on. It's not yet over. Magnus checks and h5. He starts running another pawn down the board towards the white king. Taking is simply best, but not played. Instead, we get c3 here. The advantage just creeping down. h4 from Magnus. The knight kicked. Now we get a check. King f2, an invasion from the queen. This game's going nuts. Rook e7 pressuring the knight. The pawn captures on d4. Magnus now a pawn down. We get queen takes on h2, restoring the material, and this one just got a bit dangerous. King d2, king d8 back. We get queen f3. Now this queen comes into d6. Few more shuffly moves here, right? You know, many checks, just moving around. White doesn't want the draw, so the knight hops forward, but h3. Now these rook moves are better for white here. Activate it, go for a mating attack. But rook h1 played, more passive, but looking to pick up the pawn. So pawn h2, queen g3, surely that's going to drop. But suddenly things go almost level with rook e4. Now this one was played instead, still attacking the knight, but it does allow the king to cover. Or you could check here, but this one was played. Now rook e7 check, and here on move 79 we get an incredible blunder. You should go king f2, but king f3 is played. And this is terrible because you can check from c6, you're picking up a loose rook in the corner unless white goes d5, played, but now you get this whole series of checks here, right? The king being given the runaround, and when it goes to g4, the rook is dropping in the corner and black is just winning. What a ludicrous game. A check's thrown in, but Magnus simply captures. Now you can give this black king a massive runaround, which we now see, but it lands here and there's no more good checks. So the pawn captures rook, Now we get a check from Magnus. The queen is made. More spike checks, but that's all they are at this stage. There's nothing left to be done for white. The kings run around the board. We get to this position here and we see lost on time, or maybe resignation actually, because there's no more good checks. Check here, lose your queen. Check here, lose your queen, of course. Nothing to play. Black's about to checkmate the white king, and this was Magnus's face when the whole ordeal was finished. What a crazy game. How does he do it? Smash subscribe if you enjoy these kind of videos, never miss a future one, and for the ultimate opening trash game, check out the video on screen. And by the way, if you want to join the ultimate epic chess community, then check out the link in the description below, hop on the Discord, and I hope to see you over there. Cheers.